Dave Roberts never raises his voice. That is not a characterization. That is a fact that the people who work closest to him will offer without hesitation when asked to describe his management style. In a profession that rewards intensity and occasionally confuses volume with authority, Roberts has built his reputation on something quieter and more durable. He communicates. He listens. He makes decisions that sometimes frustrate people and stands behind them with the calm of a man who has thought them through carefully before arriving at them. Which is exactly why, when his voice rose in that corridor after the game, everyone who heard it stopped what they were doing. Including Tarik Skubal. Skubal had been a Dodger for a matter of weeks. Long enough to understand the rhythms of a new clubhouse. Not long enough to have fully mapped its emotional geography, the unspoken rules, the invisible boundaries, the particular weight that certain names carry in certain rooms. He had not yet learned, in other words, exactly what it meant when Dave Roberts raised his voice at Shohei Ohtani. But he understood what he saw. And what he saw made him speak. To understand the confrontation, you need to understand the play. It happened in the 6th inning. A ball hit into the gap, the kind of gap shot that requires a decision made in fractions of a second, the kind of decision that separates players who think about what might happen from players who simply respond to what is happening. Ohtani responded. He ran. Not at the careful, measured pace of a man managing a known physical concern. He ran at full speed. The kind of sprint that leaves nothing in reserve, that asks everything of a body in a single sustained burst. He made it safely. The play worked. By the only metric that the scoreboard recognizes, it was the right decision. The run mattered. The hustle mattered. The outcome was exactly what it needed to be. But the people in the Dodgers dugout who knew about the left knee were not watching the scoreboard. They were watching his leg. The left knee had been a quiet conversation for several weeks. Not public. Not the kind of concern that finds its way into injury reports or pre-game availability questions. The kind of concern that lives in the training room, in the careful language of medical staff who understand that the difference between a manageable issue and a significant one can be measured in a single play. Roberts had been briefed. He understood the parameters. He had, in the careful way that he manages everything, adjusted his expectations for what Ohtani should and should not be asked to do in the short term. Not removing him from lineups. Not limiting his role in ways that would become a story. Just being aware. Just watching. When Ohtani sprinted at full speed through the 6th inning, Roberts stopped watching and started reacting. The conversation happened in the corridor that connects the dugout to the interior of the clubhouse. Not in the dugout itself, where everything is visible and everything is watched. Not in the clubhouse, where the full audience of teammates would have given the moment a different shape. In the corridor. In the in-between space that exists in every ballpark for exactly these kinds of exchanges. Roberts was direct. Those who were nearby without being fully present, close enough to register the tone, far enough to grant the moment its necessary privacy, describe a man who had moved past his usual measured cadence into something more urgent. He was not cruel. That is important to establish clearly. There was no malice in what he said. There was no diminishment of Ohtani as a player or as a person. What there was, stripped of everything else, was fear dressed up as anger in the way that fear sometimes presents itself when the stakes are high enough and the person doing the fearing cares deeply enough about the outcome. Roberts told Ohtani that the play was not acceptable. That the knee was not something to gamble with in the 6th inning of a regular season game in May. That there are things more important than any single run. Ohtani listened. His expression, by all accounts, was not the expression of a man receiving a routine correction. It was something more layered than that. The stillness of a person absorbing something that has surprised them. Not because they disagree entirely. But because being spoken to that way, with that volume, with that urgency, was new. He said later, in the careful words he chose when the subject came up, that it was the first time he had felt something close to anger since joining the Dodgers. He did not say Roberts was wrong. He said it was the first time he had felt truly angry. Those are different statements. And Ohtani is precise enough with language to know the difference. Tarik Skubal was in the wrong place at the right time. Or the right place at the wrong time, depending on how you measure these things. He had come around the corner of the corridor with the unhurried movement of a pitcher between innings who has no immediate obligation, present in the building, not present in the game, occupying the particular in-between state that non-starting pitchers inhabit on game days. He had not been looking for anything. He had simply been moving through a space and encountered something he hadn't expected. He stopped. He took in what he was seeing with the fresh eyes of someone who had not yet learned to filter this particular situation through the accumulated context of years inside this organization. He saw a manager speaking at a volume that was not the manager's normal volume. He saw Shohei Ohtani, the player whose name had been the first thing anyone mentioned when Skubal's move to Los Angeles was announced, the player around whom the entire organizational identity currently rotated, standing in that corridor absorbing something difficult. And something in Skubal decided that he was not going to walk away. What he said did not take long. He is not, by the accounts of people who know him, a man who reaches for speeches when shorter things will do. He is a pitcher. He understands economy. He understands that the most effective delivery is the one that carries maximum impact with minimum excess. He stepped into the edge of the conversation. He told Roberts, respectfully but without apology, that what he had seen on that play was not recklessness. That from where he had been watching, Ohtani had made a baseball decision, the kind of decision that competitive players make in competitive moments, and that the outcome had justified it. He said that he understood the concern about the knee. That nobody wanted to see Ohtani hurt. That the worry was legitimate and deserved to be taken seriously. But he also said that the man standing in that corridor was Shohei Ohtani. And that Shohei Ohtani sprinting at full speed in the sixth inning of a game that needed to be won was not a problem. It was the point. The corridor was very quiet when he finished. Roberts looked at him for a moment. The look of a manager encountering an unexpected variable and deciding in real time how to incorporate it. He did not dismiss what Skubal said. He also did not immediately agree with it. He nodded slightly, the nod of a man who has heard something and is placing it somewhere useful rather than somewhere dismissible, and the conversation moved into a different register. Clayton Kershaw heard about it later. Kershaw exists in the Dodgers organization as something beyond a pitcher and beyond a veteran presence. He is the institutional memory of this franchise in its current form. He has been present for enough of its significant moments to serve as a kind of living context for everything that happens within it. When something occurs that needs to be understood properly, people find their way to Kershaw eventually. His response to the Skubal situation was characteristically direct. He said that what Skubal did was exactly what a teammate is supposed to do. That the willingness to step into a difficult moment on behalf of someone you have known for only a few weeks, not to cause conflict, not to undermine authority, but to offer a perspective that the moment needed, was the definition of what this clubhouse was supposed to be about. He said something else that has stayed with the people who heard it. He said that Ohtani has spent his entire career being managed around. Being protected. Being treated as something so valuable and so fragile that the people responsible for him sometimes forget that what makes him valuable is precisely his refusal to treat himself that way. Skubal, Kershaw said, had seen that clearly. In his first few weeks. Alex Rodriguez was asked about the incident on a broadcast the following day. He came at it from a different angle than Kershaw, the angle of someone who had spent his own career navigating the particular tension between individual competitor and organizational asset, between the player who wants to give everything and the front office that needs that everything to be rationed carefully across a long season. He said Roberts was right to be concerned. He also said Skubal was right to speak. He said those two things were not contradictions. That the best organizations in baseball are the ones where both of those things can be true at the same time. Where a manager's concern and a newcomer's perspective can exist in the same corridor without one of them having to be wrong. He paused on air for a moment. Then he said, "The fact that Skubal felt he could say something, that's the story. That's what you want your clubhouse to look like." Ohtani was asked about it once. Briefly. By a reporter who phrased the question carefully, aware that they were touching something that had not fully resolved itself into the past tense yet. He said Roberts cares. He said that is not a small thing. He said that the anger, if that is what it was, came from somewhere real, and that he understood where it came from even when it was difficult to receive. Then he said something that ended the conversation as cleanly as a called third strike. He said, "Would run again." Not defiantly. Not as a challenge. Just as a fact about who he is, stated plainly, without apology and without decoration. The reporter wrote it down. There was nothing to add.